Hello, readers. Welcome to Tuesday night, not Taco Tuesday, Tuesday treats of reading. I just made that up and it didn't work very well. Shout out to my young friend from Ireland, and her name, I'm going to get it. I'm going to take too long. Carla, I think, or Cara. I forget which one now. I've got to look. Oh, Clara. Carla. Hey, Kelly. It's a long time since I've talked to you live. But she watches from Ireland, and I so appreciate that. Not that that doesn't intimidate me to know that people are in the UK watching as I read Pride and Prejudice, like the most British, Irish. I mean, it's not Irish, but hey, Haley. I need to respond to your comment. I saw it, but I was driving. Drew says that his teacher's super strict and gives out way too much homework to read, and it's stressful. So this is helping everybody do better in school. Yay! And here we are at 10,050 subscribers. Who knew? It's craziness, just craziness to me. So I want to, I'm trying to remember, Haley, it sounded like, oh, I know what happened. I was going to tell you my answer. I composed my answer in my head. Sometimes the movies aren't like the book. So maybe who you think is the father isn't the father. She did a spoiler. Isn't that a bummer? She went to look up a movie and the movie told, why did it give so much information? Because that's like a big spoiler to put into the little blurb about the movie. All right, for those of you that are reading along, who are reading along with me, Pride and Prejudice, we're on chapter 17, which is page 80, which doesn't seem very far. How many total pages are there in this? Yeah, we've got a long way to go. 300. I can't get this page to turn. 68. Fini. So you don't know. It could be a different ending. I'm not going to tell you because I do know. But I'm not going to ruin it. So let's read. What do you guys think about the fashion? You think that fashion will ever come back? Makes everybody look pregnant. But it was very much Josephine, Napoleon and Josephine, that time period. Elizabeth related to Jane the next day what had passed between Mr. Wickham and herself. You know how sisters are. They tell all the information. Hi, Lee Ambrose. Jane listened with astonishment and concern. She knew not how to believe that Mr. Darcy could be so unworthy of Mr. Bingley's regard. And yet it was not in her nature to question the truth, of a young man of such amiable appearance as Wickham. The possibility of his having really endured such unkindness was enough to interest all her tender feelings. And nothing, therefore, remained to be done. Oh, this is a long chapter. My goodness. Oh, wow, guys. I don't know that I'll get this chapter read. No, that's 19. So where was 18? I missed it. I know. Do you do that? Do you like to see how long you're stuck reading? I hate to say stuck, but I don't know. Maybe it's a really short it's a really short chapter. Okay. So we may get 2 done. Unless I keep stopping and talking. The possibility of his having really endured such unkindness was enough to interest all her tender feelings, and nothing therefore remained to be done but to think well of them both, to defend the conduct of each, and throw into the account of accident or mistake whatever could not be otherwise explained. They have both, said she, been deceived, I dare say, in some way or other, of which we can form no idea. Interested people have perhaps misrepresented each to the other. It is, in short, impossible for us to conjecture the causes or circumstances which may have alienated them without actual blame on either side. She's like, I don't want to get into it. We don't know the whole story, so they could have just misunderstood each other, and she doesn't want to think ill of anyone. Yeah. Hey, Venus. Franklin Felipe Fernandez. I like when you come on, though. I'm sorry you have all the work, but I'm glad you're here. Come see us on Discord. Because Siddharth's not here to invite you, so I have to say it for him. Very true indeed. And now, my dear Jane, what have you got to say in behalf of the interested people who have probably been concerned in the business? Do clear them too, or we shall be obliged to think ill of somebody. Laugh as much as you choose, but you will not laugh me out of my opinion. My dearest Lizzie, do not consider what a disgraceful light that places Mr. Darcy to be treating his father's favorite in such a manner, one whom his father had promised to provide for. It is impossible. No man of common humanity, no man who had any value for his character could be capable of it. Can his intimate friends be so excessively deceived in him? Oh, no. I can much more easily believe Mr. Bingley's being imposed on than that Mr. Wickham should invent such a history of himself as he gave me last night. Names, facts, everything mentioned without ceremony. If it be not so, let Mr. Darcy contradict it. Besides, there was truth in his looks. It is difficult indeed. It is distressing. One does not know what to think. I beg your pardon. One knows exactly what to think. Well, you're right, Haley, you could, but I have to make you a moderator, and I don't remember how I did that. So we're all up a creek there. 8th grade, good for you. And here you are reading Pride and Prejudice. You're going to get ahead. You're going to jump ahead. The two ladies were delighted to see their dear friend again, called it an age since they had met, and repeatedly, I think I jumped way out. But Jane could think with certainty on only one point, that Mr. Bingley, if he had been imposed on, would have much to suffer when the affair became public. The two young ladies were summoned from the shrubbery where this conversation passed by the arrival of some of the very persons of whom they had been speaking. Mr. Bingley and his sisters came to give their personal invitation for the long-expected ball at Netherfield, which was fixed for the following Tuesday. The two ladies were delighted to see their dear friend again, called it an age since they'd met, and repeatedly asked what she'd been doing with herself since their separation. To the rest of the family, they paid little attention, avoiding Mrs. Bennet as much as possible, saying not much to Elizabeth and nothing at all to the others. They were soon gone again, rising from their seats with an activity which took their brother by surprise, and hurrying off as if eager to escape from Mrs. Bennet's civilities. The prospect of the Netherfield ball was extremely agreeable to every female of the family. Mrs. Bennet chose to consider it as given in compliment to her eldest daughter, and was particularly flattered by receiving the invitation from Mr. Bingley himself instead of a ceremonious card. Jane pictured to herself a happy evening in the society of her two friends and the attentions of her brother, and Elizabeth thought with pleasure of dancing a great deal with Mr. Wickham. So she definitely has a crush on Mr. Wickham. And of seeing a confirmation of everything in Mr. Darcy's look and behavior. The happiness, she wants to out him. She wants him to she wants to watch his reaction to Wickham, and then she'll know that it was all true. The happiness anticipated by Catherine and Lydia depended less on any single event or any particular person, for though they each, like Elizabeth, meant to dance half the evening with Mr. Wickham, he was by no means the only partner who could satisfy them, and a ball was, at any rate, a ball. So a big party. They're really excited about this big party. And even Mary could assure her family that she had no disinclination for it. Mary's kind of the plain one. And there's all this conversation going on over here, and I want to see what you guys are all saying. Oh, that's a good question. Haley, Franklin, Philippe, do you like 8th grade? Good. I have already read Fahrenheit 451. It's on my playlist. I like to teach it. I think it's a good story. I like Ray Bradbury. I watched a really good interview about why he wrote Fahrenheit 451. So I'm happy to say that's on my playlist. Yay! I hate when people want a book. Hey, I've got to read this book. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have it read. And I know I'm not going to get to it. Like, this is going to take forever, and I'm already ready to read Animal Farm. But look, you can't see. Like, we have to read all of this. So stop talking and I'll read. Oh, you're recommending it, Franklin. I'm glad we're in agreement. It's a great story. Um, I don't like some parts of it, but I don't want to give away, Haley, what another plot. You already found out enough spoilers today. While I can have my mornings to myself, said she, it is enough. I think it no sacrifice to join occasionally in evening engagements. Society has claims on us all, and I profess myself one of those who consider intervals of recreation and amusement as desirable for everybody. Elizabeth's spirits were so high on the occasion that though she did not often speak unnecessarily to Mr. Collins, she could not help asking him whether he intended to accept Mr. Bingley's invitation, and if he did, whether he would think it proper to join in the evening's amusement, and she was rather surprised to find that he entertained no scruple whatever on that head, and was very far from dreading a rebuke either from the Archbishop or Lady Catherine de Bourgh by venturing to dance. I am by no means of opinion, I assure you, said he, that a ball of this kind, given by a young man of character to respectable people, can have any evil tendency, and I am so far from objecting to dancing myself, that I shall hope to be honored with the hands of all my fair cousins in the course of the evening. And I take this opportunity of soliciting yours, Miss Elizabeth, for the first 2 dances especially, a preference which I trust my cousin Jane will attribute to the right cause, and not to any disrespect for her. Elizabeth felt herself completely taken in. She had fully proposed being engaged by Mr. Wickham for those very dances, and to have Mr. Collins, indeed. Her liveliness had never been worse timed. There was no help for it, however. Wickham's happiness and her own was perforce delayed a little longer, and Mr. Collins' proposal accepted with as good a grace as she could. She was not the better pleased with his gallantry, from the idea it suggested of something more. It now first struck her that she was selected from among her sisters as worthy as being the mistress of Hunsford Parsonage, and of assisting to form a quadrille table at Rosings in the absence of more eligible visitors. She realizes what Mr. Collins is interested in. And remember, that keeps the house in the family if she goes for him. The idea soon reached to conviction as she observed his increasing civilities toward herself, and heard his frequent attempt at a compliment on her wit and vivacity. And though more astonished than gratified herself by this effect of her charms, it was not long before her mother gave her to understand that the probability of their marriage was exceedingly agreeable to her. Mom likes the idea of her marrying Mr. Collins. Elizabeth, however, did not choose to take the hint, being well aware that a serious dispute must be the consequence of any reply. Mr. Collins might never make the offer, and till he did, it was useless to quarrel about him. So she's not going to argue with her mom about it because she doesn't know that he really wants to marry her. So, why waste time fighting now? If there had not been a Netherfield ball to prepare for and talk of, the younger Mrs. Bennet would have been in a pitiable state at this time, for from the day of the invitation to the day of the ball, there was such a succession of rain as prevented their walking to Meryton once. No aunt, no officers, no news could be sought after. The very shoe roses for Netherfield were gone by proxy. Even Elizabeth might have found some trial of her patience in weather which totally suspended the improvement of her acquaintance with Mr. Wickham. And nothing less than a dance on Tuesday could have made such a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday endurable to Kitty and Lydia. So that's the end of chapter 17. Let me see what all this conversation is. Spoiler prone. Can't stay long, but I'll try to. Oh, Venus, you still working and you have school. You have so much to go all the time. I miss seeing you. Pride and Prejudice is very long. It'll take us a while to get through. I don't think it's as long as the In the Time of the Butterflies, though. Eric Chino, hi. We're all doing well. How about you? Good. I'm glad y'all are here. And let's see, that's only 14 minutes. Gosh, we've got 8 viewing, which, compared to real YouTubers, that's nothing, but it's a lot for me, and I'm excited. I'm excited to be over 10,000, and I don't know how to celebrate. Get to 20, I guess. Now, this next chapter looks quite... We'll do our best. Let's see. That one I think is my longest. Thank you, Franklin Philippe. Haley, I think Butterflies is the longest one I've done, and probably not one of my favorite. Maybe I'd have to look at the episodes, but maybe And the Mountains Roared. That's better than In the Time of the Butterflies. Sorry, I don't love it. Chapter 1884, page 84. Let's see what the book looks like without the jacket. Oh, it's a nice green with the spine in gold. It feels, I like that sound. What do they call that when it's all about sound? ASMR. Does that make you crazy, or do you like the sound? It's a beautiful book. I don't have those good microphones to make the sound. I think you're probably only hearing the air conditioning compressor. All right, page 84. Till Elizabeth entered the drawing room at Netherfield and looked in vain for Mr. Wickham among the cluster of redcoats there assembled. A doubt of his being present had never occurred to her. Oh my goodness, what if he's not there? She will be so disappointed. I remember that when I was a teenager and you're going to the dance or whatever, and you kind of have a crush on a boy and he kind of has a crush on you, and you're too shy to say, your generation probably isn't going to understand this, but you're too shy to say to each other, do you want to go? And you talk about your friends, and your friends are all going to meet up, and maybe he'll be there, maybe I'll be there, and nobody commits. And then you get there and your eyes, you're just trying to be cool, but you're like scanning. Is he here? Is he here? And he's scanning. And then you see each other, and then you're like trying to act like, oh, you're here. I didn't know, right? That's what's happening for her. The certainty of meeting him had not been checked by any of those recollections that might not unreasonably have alarmed her. She had dressed with more than usual care and prepared in the highest spirits for the conquest of all that remained unsubdued of his heart, trusting that it was not more than might be won in the course of the evening. But in an instant arose the dreadful suspicion of his being purposely omitted from Mr. Darcy's pleasure in the Bingleys' invitation to the officers. And though this was not exactly the case, the absolute fact of his absence was pronounced by his friend Mr. Denny, to whom Liddy eagerly applied, and who told them that Wickham had been obliged to go to town on business the day before and was not yet returned, adding with a significant smile, I do not imagine his business would have called him away just now if he had not wished to avoid a certain gentleman here. This part of his intelligence, though unheard by Lydia, was caught by Elizabeth, and as it assured her that Darcy was less answerable for Wickham's absence than if her first surmise had been just, every feeling of displeasure against the former was so sharpened by immediate disappointment she could hardly reply with tolerable civility to the polite inquiries which he directly afterwards approached to make. So she's super disappointed. She's going to be grumpy to everybody. And she's mad at Darcy because he's the reason Wickham didn't come. For the physical book. Yeah, it's a beautiful book. A celebration Zoom. I could do that. But I mean, what do? We just stare at each other? What do we do for the party? I could put on music. Sorry, Philippe. Thanks for stopping in. I sure will. Talk and celebrate. Okay, well, we can try. I can make a meeting. Stare at each other. Yeah. Hello. Put music on and dance. I'm not a very good dancer. We could try. TikTok. So she's mad. Attention, forbearance, patience with Darcy was injury to Wickham. She was resolved against any sort of conversation with him and turned away with a degree of ill humor which she could not wholly surmount even in speaking to Mr. Bingley, whose blind partiality provoked her. But Elizabeth was not formed for ill humor, and though every prospect of her own was destroyed for the evening, it could not dwell long on her spirits, and having told all her griefs to Charlotte Lucas, whom she had not seen for a week, she was soon able to make a voluntary transition to the oddities of her cousin, and to point him out to her particular notice. The two first dances, however, brought a however, brought a return to the distress. They were dances of mortification. Mr. Collins, awkward and solemn, apologizing instead of attending, and often moving wrong without being aware of it, gave her all the shame and misery which a disagreeable partner for a couple of dances can give. Poor thing, Mr. Collins is not a good dancer. The moment of her release from him was ecstasy. Um, She danced next with an officer, and had the refreshment of talking of Wickham, and of hearing that he was universally liked. When those dances were over, she returned to Charlotte Lucas, and was in conversation with her, when she found herself suddenly addressed by Mr. Darcy, who took her so much by surprise in his application for her hand, that without knowing what she did, she accepted him. Oh, she meant to be mad, and I'm gonna ignore him. And then she's so surprised by it, she's like, oh, okay, I'll dance. Ishan Singh, I don't mean to disturb you. Thank you. You can always disturb me to tell me you love my videos. Their eyes were watching God. I'm so glad. It's really a great story. I think the language is so hard in it, though. So she's like trying to be dismissive of Darcy, but then she finds herself dancing with him. I dare say you will find him very agreeable. When the dancing recommenced, however, and Darcy approached to claim her hand, Charlotte could not help cautioning her in a whisper not to be a simpleton and allow her fancy for Wickham to make her appear unpleasant in the eyes of a man of 10 times his consequence. Elizabeth made no answer and took her place in the set, amazed at the dignity to which she was arrived in being allowed to stand opposite to Mr. Darcy, and reading in her neighbors' looks their equal amazement in beholding it. They stood for some time without speaking a word, and she began to imagine that their silence was to last through the 2 dances, and at first was resolved not to break it, till suddenly fancying that it would be the greater punishment to her partner to oblige him to talk, she made some slight observation on the dance. He replied and was silent again. After a pause of some minutes, she addressed him in a second time with, "It's your turn to say something now, Mr. Darcy. I talked about the dance, and you ought to make some kind of remark on the size of the room or the number of the couples." He smiled and assured her that whatever she wished him to say aloud, to say, should be said. "Very well, that reply will do for the present. Perhaps by and by I may observe that private balls are much pleasanter than public ones, but now we may be silent." "Do you talk by rule then while you are dancing?" "Sometimes, sometimes. One must speak a little, you know. It would look odd to be entirely silent for half an hour together, and yet for the advantage of some, conversation ought to be so arranged as that they may have the trouble of saying as little as possible. Are you consulting your own feelings in the present case, or do you imagine that you are gratifying mine?" "Both," replied Elizabeth archly, "for I have always seen a great similarity in the turn of our minds. We are each of an unsocial, taciturn disposition, unwilling to speak unless we expect to say something that will amaze the whole room and be handed down to posterity with all the eclat of a proverb." "This is no very striking resemblance of your own character, I am sure," he said. "How near it may be to mine, I cannot pretend to say. You think it a faithful portrait, undoubtedly. I must not decide on my own performance." He made no answer, and they were again silent till they had gone down the dance. When he asked her if she and her sisters did not often walk to Meryton, she answered in the affirmative, and unable to resist the temptation, added, "When you met us there the other day, we had just been forming a new acquaintance." A new acquaintance. The effect was immediate. A deeper shade of hauteur, like haughtiness, overspread his features, but he said not a word, and Elizabeth, though blaming herself for her own weakness, could not go on. At length Darcy spoke, and in constrained manner said, "Mr. Wickham is blessed with such happy manners as may ensure his making friends. Whether he may be equally capable of retaining them is less certain." "He has been so unlucky to lose your friendship," replied Elizabeth with emphasis, "and in a manner which he is likely to suffer from all his life." Darcy made no answer, and seemed desirous, like he wanted, of changing the subject. At that moment, Sir William Lucas appeared close to them, meaning to pass through the set to the other side of the room, but on perceiving Mr. Darcy, he stopped with a bow of superior courtesy, courtesy to compliment him on his dancing and his partner. I have been most highly gratified indeed, my dear sir. Such very superior dancing is not often seen. It is evident that you belong to the first circles. Allow me to say, however, that your fair partner does not disgrace you, and that I must hope to have this pleasure often repeated, especially when a certain desirable event, my dear Miss Eliza, glancing at her sister in Bingley, shall take place. What congratulations will then flow in? I appeal to Mr. Darcy, but let me not interrupt you, sir. You will not thank me for detaining you from this bewitching converse of that young lady whose bright eyes are also upbraiding me. So this old man is like interrupting this young couple, and he thinks that they're flirting and falling in love, and he thinks that Jane and Bingley are falling in love. So he's kind of just being an old busybody. The latter part of his address was scarcely heard by Darcy, but Sir William's allusion to his friend seemed to strike him forcibly, and his eyes were directed with a very serious expression towards Bingley and Jane, who were dancing together. Recovering himself, however, shortly, he returned to his partner and said, Sir William's interruption has made me forget what we were talking of. Oh, GT Music. Frankenstein's on my playlist. Thousand Splendid Suns. Good. I like Frankenstein. There's some parts, and I think I skip them in the episode that I do, but some of it's a little too wordy. It gets into detail that I never quite see the need for. And as far as Dracula, I read it with my daughter. I never taught it, and it's very good. The latter part of his address was scarcely heard by Darcy, but Sir William's allusion to his friend seemed to strike him forcibly, and his eyes were directed with a very serious expression towards Bingley and Jane, who were dancing together. Recovering himself, however, shortly, he turned to his partner and said, Sir William's interruption has made me... I just reread that. I'm so sorry. I do not think we were speaking at all. Sir William could not have interrupted any two people in the room who had less to say for themselves. We have tried 2 or 3 subjects already without success, and what we are to talk of next I cannot imagine. What think you of books? Said he, smiling. Books? Oh, no. I am sure we never read the same, or not with the same feelings. I'm sorry you think so, but if that be the case, there can be at least no want of subject. We may compare our different opinions. No, I cannot talk of books in a ballroom. My head is always full of something else. The present always occupies you in such scenes, does it? Said he, with a look of doubt. Yes, always, she replied, without knowing what she said, for her thoughts had wandered far from the subject, as soon afterwards appeared by her suddenly exclaiming, I remember hearing you once say, Mr. Darcy, that you hardly ever forgave, that your resentment once created was unappeasable. You are very cautious, I suppose, as to its being created? I am, said he with a firm voice, and never allow yourself to be blinded by prejudice? I hope not. It is particularly incumbent on those who never change their opinion to be secure of judging properly at first. May I ask to what these questions tend? Merely to the illustration of your character, said she, endeavoring to shake off her gravity, seriousness. I'm trying to make it out. And what is your success? Hey, Siddharth, we need you to put I think they've already left, the link to Discord. I need to put it into my Instagram because I have somebody writing me on Instagram and I told them to come join Discord. She shook her head. I do not get on at all. I hear such different accounts of you as puzzle me exceedingly. I can readily believe, answered he gravely, that reports may vary greatly with respect to me, and I could wish, Miss Bennet, that you were not to sketch my character at the present moment, as there is reason to fear that the performance would reflect no credit on either. But if I do not take your likeness now, I may never have another opportunity. I would by no means suspend any pleasure of yours, he coldly replied. She said no more, and they went down the other dance and parted in silence, on each side dissatisfied, though not in equal degree. For in Darcy's breast there was a tolerable, powerful feeling towards her, which soon procured her pardon and directed all his anger against another. So he has fallen for her. They had not long separated, and she has not. when Miss Bingley came towards her, and with an expression of civil disdain thus accosted her. "So, Miss Eliza, I hear you are quite delighted with George Wickham. Your sister has been talking to me about him, and asking me 1,000 questions, and I find that the young man forgot to tell you, among his other communications, that he was son of old Wickham, the late Mr. Darcy's steward. Let me recommend you, however, as a friend, not to give implicit confidence to all his assertions. For as to Mr. Darcy's using him ill, it is perfectly false. For on the contrary, he has been always remarkably kind to him, though George Wickham has treated Mr. Darcy in a most infamous manner. I do not know the particulars, but I know very well that Mr. Darcy is not the least to blame, that he cannot bear to hear George Wickham mentioned, and that though my brother thought he could not well avoid including him in his invitation to the officers, he was excessively glad to find that he had taken himself out of the way." Well, who was talking? Oh, Miss Bingley. I thought it was Mr. Bingley. So she's given us all the scoop. And there's another side to the story. I was hoping that I'm glad that it helps. I struggle with audiobooks reading along because I skim. I read really fast. That's why I get tangled up when I read too. And I don't I get impatient. But when they're acted out, I really like those. Thank you, Siddharth, for the link. Look at the pretty view behind us. The sun is setting and the clouds are there. We have another hurricane coming, y'all. What is this 2020? I don't understand it. So the story is getting much more complicated, and Miss Bingley is assuring them that there's more to this Mr. Wickham story, that we're not hearing everything. Farid Hajar, hello, hello. His guilt and his dissent appear by your account to be the same, said Elizabeth angrily, for I have heard you accuse him of nothing worse than being the son of Mr. Darcy's steward, and of that I can assure you he informed me himself. I beg your pardon, replied Miss Bingley, turning away with a sneer. Excuse my interference. It was kindly meant. Insolent girl, said Elizabeth to herself. You are much mistaken if you expect to influence me by such an ignorance and the malice of Mr. Darcy. She then sought the eldest sister, who had undertaken to make inquiries on the same subject of Bingley. Jane met her with a smile of such sweet complacency, a glow of such happy expression, as sufficiently marked how well she was satisfied with the occurrences of the evening. Elizabeth instantly read her feelings, and at that moment solicitude for Wickham represented against his enemies, and everything else gave way before the hope of Jane's being in the fairest way for happiness. She's not scheming, Elizabeth. She's not thinking, oh, it's a good marriage. She's like, Jane loves him, and Jane deserves to be happy, and she's happy for him. I want to know, said she, with a countenance no less smiling than her sister's, what you have learned about Mr. Wickham, but perhaps you have been too pleasantly engaged to think of any third person, in which case you may be sure of my pardon. No, replied Jane, I have not forgotten him, but I have nothing satisfactory to tell you. Mr. Bingley does not know the whole of his history, and is quite ignorant of the circumstances which have principally offended Mr. Darcy, but he will vouch for the good conduct, the probity, the truth, and honor of his friend, and is perfectly convinced that Mr. Wickham has deserved much less attention from Mr. Darcy than he has received, and I'm sorry to say that by his account as well as his sister's, Mr. Wickham is by no means a respectable young man. I'm afraid he's been very imprudent, and was deserved to lose Mr. Darcy's regard. So he says, I don't know all the story, but I know Darcy well enough to know that he's the better man of the two. Hey, Kelly, I like that you're chatting with Sid. Haley Kelly is been with me the longest of anybody, and she has been such an asset to this channel. She really knows so many things, and we get to chat sometimes on Messenger, and just an amazing person. So I'm really excited when she shows up. It's like we're old friends, and it's maybe a year that you've been on the channel, huh? Or maybe 2, I don't know. I lose track of time that way. So let's see, we're 34 minutes in. I think I should stop because there's still a lot to go to this chapter. And it's a kind of normal stopping point. So guys, 10,050. I'll think about how to celebrate. I'm not off this Friday, but maybe the weekend. And we will. Adam Mathamaka, I'm glad you're here. I didn't see you before. I'm sorry if you spoke. Um, that's true. If you watch a lot of my videos, you'll hear me converse with Kelly and ask her to find things out. So it's fun that you get to meet her, Haley. That's nice. So help me think about a way we can celebrate. I can set up a Zoom. It'd be 30, 45 minutes. I really want to figure out how to help my English second language learners because that's important to me. Oh my gosh, there is a huge, very black spider on the wall. I guess it knows it's Halloween. And I have Halloween for my little granddaughter this weekend. Yeah. So lots going on as the sun sets and it gets dark in the background. And I tell you that black spiders are coming. Woo. And I'm not scared of spiders, but I'm scared. I didn't mean to. Adam, we already did. Oh, 100,000. Wow, you're ambitious, Adam. I don't know that we'll ever have 100,000. My daughters and I were talking today about how I should monetize. And I just don't think my channel's worth it because I watch Snow and Kurt. They are van lifers. They have an amazing channel. And then like the YouTubers that do gaming, they know how to do all the fancy things. And I just sit here and read. The quality's not always good, but you guys still subscribe. Thank you. Like, my dad was my 10,001 subscribers. He had held off waiting to get it. And he was like, oh, I'm too late. I'm 10,001. So I don't have any other fun stories to tell. I need to figure out what I'm having for dinner. And I don't have anything else. So Kelly, we need to chat soon. Probably not now because I think I'm going to go to dinner. And I just found out the cinema is open in my neighborhood. And I didn't know that. And I love to go to the movies, but I don't know if there's anything good playing. So I might do that tonight. So subscribe, click on that picture of me and you can subscribe. Click the bell. I say it carefully because my dad didn't know how to do all this. Then once you subscribe, there's a little bell, a notification bell you can click on. And those of you that have grandparents who may be having trouble with eyes and they like reading, tell them about Best Tutor Friends. Hey, it's not just for high schoolers, grandma, grandpa, Mimi, Ompa, Oma. It's for Nane, Nana. It's for people that like books. And so if you're having trouble with your eyes, you can tell your grandparents, hey, you don't have to be lonely. This crazy lady will read to you. And you can enjoy it. A spider dance. Spider dance, spider dance. I'm in a mood, aren't I? All right, guys, that's enough of that. I'm going to call it a night at 37:54. You guys keep reading, and I will read to you next time. See ya.